Hello, and welcome back to the XR101 series. In this video, I want to take a look at a number of points relevant to audio-visual perception, how we engage with sound and graphics, what pitfalls this presents for VR designers, and what best practice techniques we can employ to avoid these pitfalls. We begin with a look at visual perception, specifically the challenge of depth compression. Depth compression is a VR usability phenomenon that observes how we instinctively judge distances in VR to be approximately 25% less than the equivalent in the real world. Basically, in VR we are all liable, but especially new users, to reach out and try to grab a virtual object, only to realise that the object was actually 30 or so centimetres further away than we thought. In practice, getting a user to pick up a ball and then place that ball into a small cup in VR can be a surprisingly tall order and can get very frustrating very quickly. To manage depth compression, there are a couple of techniques that have proven very effective. First, provide interactive cues to confirm an object can actually be picked up. This could be a highlight outline on the pickup object where the user is in range, or a beep or another audible cue could sound. Second, consider the visual cues in your world, such as occlusion, size, shading, and lighting. Shadows in particular can help reinforce depth cues and give the user a better understanding of where the objects are relative to each other. Lastly, provide the user time to accommodate. Depth compression has been shown to reduce the longer the user is in the virtual world, so limiting the requirement for location-based tasks where the user has to immediately pick things up or understand the relative position of objects, at least for the first few minutes, can give the user that crucial time to adjust to simply being in VR. A second important visual challenge to be aware of is the phenomenon of accommodation convergence mismatch. In basic terms, accommodation and convergence are the two ways in which your eyes adjust to focus upon an object or at a particular depth. Convergence is the rotation of the eyes towards the object, whilst accommodation is the compression and relaxation of the eye lens. When focusing on a close object, convergence causes both eyes to rotate inwards, and accommodation makes the lens thicker. On a distant object, convergence makes the eyes more parallel, whilst accommodation makes the lens thinner. Accommodation-convergence mismatch occurs in VR when we look at a distant virtual object. When this happens, the convergence of our eyes responds to the virtual object, and the eyes become more parallel, as in the real world. But the accommodation of the lens responds to the physical screen, which is inches from our face. This act of simultaneously looking at something close and something distant can quickly strain the eyes, and it has been linked to headaches and nausea during VR use. The solution is fortunately pretty simple. Avoid placing key visual points of interest more than 5 meters from the user. Ideally, these key objects should regularly fit in what's called peripersonal space. Peripersonal space is best thought of as a bubble, extending out approximately 1 meter from the user or just outside of an arm's reach. Key objects don't have to always fit within this range, but the more often you do place them within that range, the more comfortable the VR experience will be. Next, a few words about audio. Now, it feels a little like reducing audio to a single item within this video, rather than it being the subject of a video in its own right, is doing it a bit of a disservice. And we will almost certainly address audio in more depth in a later video. But for now, the following pointers should hopefully help you make good basic use of audio in your VR project. First, make use of ambient audio to add detail and depth to your world. Soundscape audio recordings captured in a woodland or a city street and so on can give an immediate injection of life into a scene without the need for individual sounds to correspond to animated graphics. If a car can be heard passing by but it can't be seen, most users will automatically interpret that sound as simply occurring outside their field of view, rather than as a sound that doesn't quite make sense in the world. Second, make use of audio spatialization tools. Most game engines have very powerful but also easy to use 3D audio features that massively improve the user's sense of physical presence by immersing them in fully three-dimensional sound worlds that respond to their movement. Such 3D point sounds can be easily attached to various props within the scene or attached to the hand controller or to the headset. Third, consider audio text replacement. Text takes up a lot of physical space in VR very quickly. If you want to deliver complex instruction or rich dialogue, always consider if it's possible to present that information as a voiceover rather than graphically represented text. This not only keeps visual space free within the scene, but also enables the user to stay physically orientated towards the visual elements or the interactive tasks without having to stop and start whilst they read printed instructions. Lastly, consider audio for user orientation. Audio can be observed anywhere within the user's 360-degree presence, whilst visuals can only be observed within the user's approximately 110-degree field of view. So if you want to make a user turn 180 degrees, you could use a visual cue, but you need that cue to originate in their field of view and then move around them, encouraging them to follow that cue until they're facing the way you want them to. Or you could simply place a 3D sound behind them. To finish this video, a little look into cyber sickness. Now, we've already discussed various points highly relevant to cyber sickness in this and other videos, but it remains worthy of a bit more exploration, as what we haven't yet discussed are some of the best practice tips you should consider to try to minimize cyber sickness in your VR experience. First, lower the light intensity and colour saturation of your environment. Extreme contrasts can be very uncomfortable. Many user experience studies have found colour and shading to be inherently more intense in VR headsets compared to flat screen displays, so there's little advantage in maxing out the saturation. Next, if you are going to use extreme lighting, colours or shades, do so sparingly and absolutely avoid sudden changes. Next, always keep optimization of your project in mind, specifically how it can affect frame rate. Poorly optimized VR that overtaxes the hardware commonly causes drops in frame rate and system latency, neither of which are particularly good for the stomach. Another recommendation is to allow the user to have control over their movement as much as possible. For instance, unless you've got a very good reason, make them the driver, never the passenger. You should also consider including skyboxes or other large, distant and persistent objects in the virtual world to help provide a stable visual horizon. Another good tip is to avoid intentional visual distortions such as zoom effects, head bobbing or screen decals. Whilst such effects can be very useful on a 2D display, they're typically much more of a hindrance than an asset in a VR experience. Next, never attach visual elements, whether they're 2D or 3D, to the user's headset. For instance, splash screens for the experience's title or the logo. Always place these within the world. Yes, there's the outside chance that the user will be looking the wrong way when they appear, but if you attach a splash screen, for example, to the headset, then you really should be the one to clean up the mess. And finally, consider duration inherent to your experience. Even today, most people still find that headset-based VR becomes uncomfortable after 30 minutes, so it is worth considering if your project really needs to present a longer experience. If it does, can that experience be reliably broken up into sections? Games like Beat Saber use individual rounds to separate periods of play. Each period is no longer than a song, and it returns the player to the main hub afterwards, each time giving them a little nudge and implicitly asking, do you wish to continue? Other games that present a singular linear narrative, such as Arizona Sunshine, obviously cannot use the same tactic as Beat Saber, but they can carefully consider the likely completion time for each major event or scene. Arizona Sunshine achieves this by interspersing each heavy action event with a calmer, exploratory event, providing an opportunity for the player to consider whether they wish to continue. Again, the trick is to be implicit, not explicit. A pop-up that pauses the game to ask if you wish to keep playing would be irritating. Providing a more natural point in the experience where the user has the opportunity to make that choice without any prompt is far more impressive. To summarise, the fundamental nature of head-mounted VR raises a wide range of pretty unique user experience challenges. It hurts our eyes, it hurts our necks, it tries to walk us into walls, and in some instances it tries to trip us up or tangle us up in cables. It makes us suffer vertigo, it makes us suffer motion sickness, and it distorts our perception of space. The good news is that all of these challenges can be managed with good design. Hopefully this video has provided some useful direction in such design techniques and sets you on the right path to designing virtual reality experiences that are comfortable, accessible and engaging, and don't leave a mess on the carpet. Thanks for watching.